Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, has joined a last-minute push to urge NATO allies to block the Nord Stream II gas pipeline, warning that Moscow would exploit its position if European nations became reliant on it for energy. James Rogers is the co-founder and Director of Research on the Council on Geostrategy think tank. Thank you very much for joining the programme, James. In a sentence, if you would, can you explain what Nord Stream II is, please?
Yes, of course, Tom. Good to be with you. Yes, it's basically the second part of a pipeline network that connects Russia through the Baltic Sea directly to Germany, bypassing the existing gas distribution infrastructure that travels primarily through Ukraine.
Why is it a problem?
It's a problem because, well, there are three reasons, really. The first reason is that it actually increases Germany's energy dependency on Russia, which enables the Kremlin potentially, and we have seen this in the past, to try and blackmail the countries to which its gas goes, which can, of course, then have political consequences and make those countries more conducive to the Kremlin's geopolitical writ, particularly in Eastern Europe. Secondly, it creates an ongoing structural relationship whereby Germany buys Russian gas, which provides Russia's kleptocratic regime with the resources it needs to undermine European democracies, to rearm itself and to cause a general nuisance. And then finally, it also undermines the security of Ukraine, a growing and important British partner, and in two ways. Firstly, Ukraine loses some of the potential gas transit revenues as the gas is switched through the Baltic. And then secondly, Ukraine loses some of its geostrategic importance as a transit country, and that actually makes it more vulnerable to Russian pressure. So maybe, when Ukraine loses this importance, Russia will then step up its military activities in the country and cause further problems in the Black Sea region.
This has been under construction for some years now. And back in 2016, I think, the British government were quietly opposed to this. They weren't jumping up and down about it, but the official position of the British government was they were worried about it. Trump came in and slapped tariffs and they basically he got charges brought on those companies that were trying to complete the gas pipeline, meaning it made it almost financially impossible for those companies to complete it. Now it seems like it's very close to actually being finalised. So what power does the British government have to try and stop it?
Well, what's happened is the German regulator has suspended approval of the scheme. It says that there are a number of different issues relating to how companies run, but basically at the moment, the company that operates Nord Stream is apparently not in line with German law. There's also a problem in relation to European law and the Swiss, who are also involved in the project. Now, this has provided an opening for a number of countries, including the UK, that have not supported this scheme and think it's actually a threat to their interest, to stand up and say, hey, actually, this is a time for a rethink. Now, the UK has been trying to cultivate for some years closer relations with Eastern European countries, particularly in the Baltic, but also Ukraine and countries around the Black Sea. Now, in the integrated review that the government released back in March, it stated quite clearly that the UK now considers Russia to be a direct acute threat, not only to British interests, but also to Europe more generally, and also that there would be a general British tilt towards the Indo-Pacific region. So what happens in the Black Sea, what happens in Ukraine, then gains extra importance because the main access route to the Indo-Pacific is through the Eastern Mediterranean and, of course, the Suez Canal. So Britain doesn't want to see Russia increasingly strong in that region. So I think what the UK is now doing is it's trying to build relations with its Eastern European allies and partners. Liz Truss called, for example, the Baltic states and the Visegrad Four a kind of a frontier of freedom and part of a network of liberty.
And I see that she's been pictured in a tank in Latvia today.
Yes, exactly. The UK provides actually the largest component of NATO's enhanced forward presence. Not only the most troops, but also the most troops to the most countries, both Poland and to Estonia. So there's a very strong British commitment to that region. The government is trying to extend that now down into the Black Sea region, particularly to Ukraine, to ensure that Russia doesn't get stronger there. Because if it gets stronger there, then that means that basically it can then export its power and its pressure across other parts of Europe, including, as we saw only a couple of years ago in Salisbury, on the streets of Britain. So this is also a threat to the British people as well as it is to the people of Ukraine or the people of the Baltic region.
It is still extraordinary to me that this was ever thought to be a good idea, to have more reliance on Russia for something as critical as gas to an entire continent. Listen, James, good to talk to you. Fascinating. Thank you. James Rogers, co-founder, Director of Research of the Council on Geostrategy think